Well, hi, Case. Welcome to the High Vibration Living Podcast.
Hello there. Thanks for having me. I'm honored.
It's a treat for me to have you on here because I love seeing your words, right? And I love uh how the words that you share kind of help us all as a community connect. Right? That's kind of the joy of Instagram and social media and books and podcasts is how when we share our words, we're able to realize that we aren't alone and we can connect with like-minded people. And you mentioned something, the power of language, and that is a topic that really interests you these days. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for having me. And yeah, I mean, it is a crazy world to live in, time to live in. And like the power of language, the power of mindfulness, the power of optimism has never been more clear to me. And just like case in point, like this isn't a brag. I think this is a testament less about me and more about the power of language. But like I post things on Instagram. And yeah, granted, I've got a large following, but I post something and 12 hours later, it's reached 1 million people. Like, I mean, yada yada, algorithms, social media addiction, whatever. But I just think there's something so powerful about writing. Like a lot of people ask me, Case, like, why don't you do more videos and like reels and TikToks and stuff? And I always say, like, first and foremost, I am an author, so I prefer to sit down and be really particular about the language I use. But eventually, things that have gigantic impact get turned into words and language and quotes. And I like to think I'm cutting out the middleman and I'm writing in a format that has staying power, that has sharing power. I just think there's something so universal about you could really, really strike a chord with someone with the right language. And you could do that with many media as well. I just think there's something about language and social media just as an observation. The question though, I mean, for me, like I sit in the realm of mindfulness. So, and mindfulness means different things to different people. I could ask your definition, you could ask mine. We would have different definitions probably, but we'd also find some core commonality in that, most people say mindfulness is the art of listening to yourself in some capacity, right? It's being present in mind and body, grounded in how you feel. It's practicing the art of non-judgment of how you feel. It's being present. I think that's a good definition. I don't think it takes into account language. I think when I think about mindfulness, I think about mindfulness as listening to yourself, but it's also talking to yourself. Specifically, the language that you use to talk to yourself. Because when I think about mindfulness, I actually think about optimism. I think mindfulness and optimism are obviously intrinsically linked,
Yeah.
being that optimism is, for me at least, the belief that things can change. Not necessarily butterflies and rainbows, like positive, positive, positive. It's just the belief that, hey, things can change. I can change things. The world can accommodate me and surprise me in beautiful ways. Things can change. The belief that things can change, optimism, mindfulness, starts with the language that we use, like literally the way that we talk to ourselves. The examples I always give, like, would be, and we can go over so many examples, but like I do a lot of public speaking and I led a session this past weekend here in Miami, and it was like myself, it was Deepak Chopra, it was Gary Vee, it was Ryan Holiday, these big people who have such great merit to them. And then there's little old me. I always, even though I do a lot of speaking and I say I'm a professional yapper because I do the podcast for a living, I was nervous beforehand. I was getting a little nervous. And I was like, I feel nervous. I feel this emotion. I'm listening to myself. Mindfulness one, but I am excited. I feel nervous. Here's the feeling, but I am excited. The power of language, the ability to say that things can change, the ability to find, non-judgment in my emotion. I feel nervous. I'm not going to ignore that feeling and just say, no, 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 no. I feel nervous, but I am excited, right? And you can think a lot of other examples too. Like you feel lost, you feel stuck, but the reality is you're learning. The reality is you're transitioning, right? The difference in language there. And, a lot of my work is helping people explore that internal dialogue through mindful questioning, through journaling, things like that. But I just find so much finality in the way that we label ourselves these days. You are this attachment style, you are this and that, and all very helpful stuff, certainly. But I've just found if you want to be an optimistic person, you have to believe that things can change. And really, the only way to quantify that in your head is the words you choose. So that's the power of language to me. And I can go on and on and on, but I just think there's something to be said about language. We borrow a lot of language from other people. We use words that have meaning, but do they have meaning to us? I mean, just and being intentional in that. So a lot of my work is dedicated to literally just helping people choose better, more personal language.
When you were getting ready to go on stage, do you have a routine to hype yourself up, or is it just mental work that you do for yourself?
My routine is preparation. I mean, I like my mom was an attorney, very much a detail oriented person. I remember when I was like 12, she gave me this piece of paper. I still have it in my childhood room next to my Ferrari poster. I'll see it in a couple of weeks when I go home, but it literally says the 7 P's. It says proper prior planning and preparation prevents poor performance. At the time, I'm like, what is this? This is so lame. But really, that's what gives me confidence. I practice speaking. I practice all these things on my girlfriend who lives here with me in Miami, where I'll speak to myself in the mirror. You know, preparation beats everything. Preparation is what gives you confidence. Standing there, wearing what you're going to wear on the day of. That is
Mm-hmm.
what always. So my routine is that a big deep breath beforehand, of course, and then that, and then but truthfully, the idea of being excited versus nervous really is a game changer. Like it is a redefining of that emotion. Like for me, it's like, yeah, I'm excited. I get to do this. This is an opportunity. I love doing this. I feel this emotion, which is valid, of course. Why wouldn't you get a little nervous? It'd be weird if you were totally oblivious to the fact that 400 people are staring at you or something. But for me, it's recalibrating, reframing, and then just relying on the fact that I love doing this. I've practiced, and we'll get through it.
The idea, though, of talking to that physical feeling, because we all know what that feeling feels like in our body when we get a little bit nervous, and reminding it that it's so similar to the same feeling of being really excited. Um, and it, and then you won't allow yourself to hold yourself back.
Yeah, that's I like that point a lot. We confuse emotions very easily.
Mhm.
Like, what is the difference between being impatient and eager, or struggling and learning, or being lost and exploring, or feeling unlovable and, being with the wrong person? Like, without examination, that's where we get lost in the sauce. And that's where we start using the wrong words. And I wrote a book called That's Bold of You because I got sick of us using the wrong words to describe ourselves. Oh, you're too sensitive. You're too ambitious. You're too loud. You're too quiet. These things that other people have said to us because they're flawed and they said something in anger, or our parents said something to us out of, you know, being told that themselves. And here we are just repeating these things over and over again. And, all these things can be helped and healed and evolved and nurtured by thinking about the language we use. And then, of course, at the deeper level, understanding ourselves and understanding where it's coming from and all that kind of work.
Yeah, and then when we put energy behind it by using those words, when we say it out loud, it makes it more powerful. So I think that's when we have to really examine how we're talking to ourselves out loud or talking to others out loud. It's that vibrational frequency that then it moves even more into our tissues and we can carry it for even longer.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to shift.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not really my space because I like to sit in the land of mindset, but I mean, there's so much science and neuroscience around the brain, the prefrontal cortex, neuroplasticity of what happens when you repeat mantras and the way that the prefrontal, and that's the area of your brain that really controls resilience and identity and all these things. So like there's the belief system, which we're kind of talking about, and then there's the science, and then there's the way it makes you feel and the confidence it gives you. So I think a lot of times we are remiss to realize the power that we give language. Like language can give us clarity or it can give us confusion. It can give us weightlessness or it can give us this incredible heaviness. And, I always say that the literal words that we choose to describe our feelings,
Mhm.
they shape the way we experience our feelings 100%. Like, it's like a toddler. If like a toddler looks to you when they fall and they see your reaction to see how they should react. It's the same way, right? So if they fall and you go, they're gonna freak out as opposed to laughing or being light about it. It's the same with the language we use.
So it's so interesting. I grew up with a mom who was a speech pathologist, and I'm more into language than I've ever been. she always just encouraged my brother and I to expand our language, and that the best way to expand our language was through books, was through reading, or again, surrounding yourself with people who just had a deeper depth of vocabulary. But how they attained that was truly through books. So I'd love to know, what books made you turn to be more passionate about mindfulness and journaling and writing?
Yes. Well, my mom's similar, not a pathologist, speech pathologist, but voracious reader and writer. Really instilled for me at an early age the power. And I would answer your question in less of a specific form and say, like, my entire upbringing has been around learning languages. So um, I might not look like it because I look like an average white dude from the Midwest American, but I majored in Chinese in college. I majored in Arabic in college. It was a double major. I've studied Hindi. I studied Urdu. I took 6 years of Latin in high school. I don't even know if they teach Latin anymore, at least in 2002, whatever they still were. I've always been good at and drawn to languages. Not, I wasn't good at, I took pre-med. I was going to be a doctor my first semester in college. Was not good. Quickly shifted, took accounting. I struggled in accounting. I was always good at weird languages and the difficult languages. So I took those languages and, really opened my eyes to everything we just said. Like,
Yeah.
there's so much cool nuance in other languages that really brings this idea to life, the words that carry meaning. And I think that, to answer your question, is what has really instilled in me and it makes sense now. At the time, I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just really drawn to these things and I'm good at it. So I'm going to, at least I had the support system to do it. Now, looking back 36, I'm like, oh, this makes sense. Like, now what I'm doing now was fueled by all this passion for learning and language and syntax and structure and the culture associated with each. So now it makes a lot of sense.
Have you looked into your past lives? Were you a philosopher? Did you own a printing press? Who have you been? I
I
would
would
love.
love, I would love to get some clarity around that. I mean, I've always been really drawn to Southeast Asian cultures. Like, I've lived
Yeah.
in China. I've spent a lot of time in China. So I'm assuming at some point I was Chinese, but that's, it's one of those things where maybe
I
I'll
haven't
never
thought of
know.
that yet. Yeah.
There's something there. There's something there. And I remember I was even the other day, I had dinner with Diego, Young Pueblo, if you know his
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
I was telling this to him. He's like, dude, you've got to read this book. And it's a book called Babel by R.F. Kuang. If you're into fiction, people would know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not,
Mhm.
well, I am now. I like to read a lot of fiction, but I was reading that book, and that book is literally a book about the power of language. It's set in this like fantasy historical time of where they have figured out how to take words and put it on silver bars, and the translation between two languages gives it superpowers. Not going to go to the whole book on the pod, but I was like, this is so freaking cool. The words that we use can make things like levitate or power a car. I was like, this is like so freaking cool, just metaphorically, to speak to the power of language. So anyway, it's just interesting now how lately the dots are kind of connecting.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Dr. Joseph Michael Levery?
Possibly. Name, not so much.
So he has a lot of great books, and his studies and practices also come back to a lot of words and phrases that are either going to be in Arabic or they're going to be in Latin. So you have to learn as a student to know how to pronounce these different languages. Some of them is Judaism, but there are phrases throughout history that, if you know how to repeat them properly and you know how many times to say them and what intention to hold behind them, they can do magic for you. They are magic. They are spells meant to bless you and bless your life and bless the world around you. But it's always really interesting where the words are from, and it's usually Arabic, Latin, Judaism. Very rarely English or the other language most of us have studied, Spanish, French. So it's just, there's so
So
much
cool.
magic within language and the vibration of the words, I think, is really going to be coming to the forefront in the next few years that we're going to be learning.
What was his name? Can you say it again?
Yeah, Dr. Joseph Michael Levery.
Okay.
Pick up any of his books.
Okay, I will. I'm writing it down now. Sorry to break the fourth wall here on the pod, but I need to look
Yeah,
into
and you
this.
can also, I take a lot of online classes with him.
Dr. Gilman.
And that's
Cool.
where, you learn a lot of these phrases, but then you have to turn to YouTube and you just have to watch videos over and over again to make sure that you're getting your pronunciation correct, because there's a sleight of tongue that we aren't used to, right?
Yeah.
Which you're lucky enough that you've study that, because what you studied now, where I am in like my spiritual self-help journey, what you studied as a young man, really basic life skills for improving yourself, the ability to pronounce words in other languages.
Yeah, it's funny that we're having this conversation. Hopefully, this is of interest to folks who are listening. But I'm leading a session this weekend, and I talk a lot about exactly what we talked about. And then I was thinking of try to giving some examples from my studies, and I was thinking about Chinese. And there's two words in Chinese. One is wen ti, pronunciation pending there, which basically means problem. Like, oh, you have a problem. And when ti carries weight to it, it means it's a difficulty, it's an issue, it needs to be resolved. We have to solve this thing. It has weight to it. Then there's another word that's jihui, which basically is also a problem, but the meaning of it is it's an opportunity for benefit. It's an opportunity for growth. Same meanings on the surface, but like Chinese has such nuance to it
Yeah.
that we don't have in English as well. So sometimes I have found that thinking through the lens of a foreign language gives you clarity in your native tongue, good old American English. But like that's probably similar to what we're talking about here, but really a good example of what I'm referring to specifically.
Yeah, that's a great example. So, can you tell me a little bit about the journaling retreats that you do?
Yeah, so they're basically what we just talked about. I'll spend some time setting the tone, and then they basically I provide journal prompts out loud for people in community with one another for about 45 to 60 minutes. So we'll journal together. Really, a focus on language, a focus on I call it contrast journaling, which is probably just an over complication of guided journaling. Like I have found we're in this amazing time, right? We're in this like renaissance of wellness where like wellness, wellness, wellness. Everyone wants to do wellness. It's red light therapy. It's cold plunge. It's ayahuasca. It's everything, which is fan freaking tastic. I love it. And I don't think it's ever remiss unless it's purely a profitable enterprise, whatever. But I have found, however, that when it comes to journaling, which is like baby step into wellness, a lot of people have slipped into kind of what I refer to as like performative journaling, where it's like you wake up and you're like, I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful for another day. And then you move along. The best journaling is journaling where you feel it. You feel it in your mind and you feel it in your body. You get a little bit of the, not every time, of course, usually like beginner gains in the gym, like you'll see it quick if you don't journal that often, but focusing on the idea of contrast, which is we're not just journaling to affirm or reaffirm things that we want to be true or that we hope to be true. And we're certainly not just saying things that sound good so we can move along with our day. You would never be remiss to do any of that. You'll never get a downside to it. I've just found looking at journaling through the lens of contrast, that is the space between places and versions of yourself, the space between who you are and who you want to be, what you've been told and what is true, past and present and future, sitting in that uncomfortable space and asking yourself tough, uncomfortable questions rather than just affirming questions. That's the best form of journaling. So, I've got, prompt after prompt that I like to lean on, from gratitude prompts to just clarifying prompts to identity prompts, which I'm happy to share, but really just along those lines. And we'll all write in community with one another. There's something cool about everyone doing the same thing at the same moment,
Mhm.
that I think just gives some intentionality to it in a day and age where it's so easy to distract yourself and kind of look out and just kind of get distracted. Yeah, I do these sessions and they're really, really meaningful for me. I like to meet people and get offline. It's cool, the impact. Most of the sessions, usually people say like, I've thought about that, but I've never thought about like this. And like the language that I use today is not usually the language that I find in my head. So it's, just
Mm.
cool, simple moments of clarity for people.
Yeah, and it's the reframe that you've mentioned a few times, or the reframe that we see, if we read your books or we follow you on Instagram. And I think that's what we're all looking for, is the reframe, because I think we're in a space, and this is what I hope people are getting from wellness, is that you can overcome your limiting beliefs and you can overcome any of these obstacles that you see in your way.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, my purpose is simple. Again, I majored in Chinese in college. I don't have a degree in psychology or so. Like, I'm not a coach. I don't do those things. For me, the purpose has always been really simple. It's to help people feel seen, for one. At the end of the day, that's all we want. Like, if you talk to a therapist who's been doing therapy for 30 years, a lot of them will tell you, amongst all the things, once they get to the root of what their patients want, they just want to feel heard. They want to feel seen. That's truly, you talk to a lot of people. So that's the objective one. I just want my writing, my sessions to help people feel seen. And the second is give them a reason to be hopeful. Give them a reason to believe that things can change, optimism. And actually, really, like when I do think about mindfulness, as much as we think that mindfulness is the art of standing still and calm and peace and lack of distraction, I really think of mindfulness as movement. Like mindfulness is movement. It's metaphorical, emotional movement, right? Healing is movement. Forgiveness is movement. The belief in change is movement. So for me, it's a very movement oriented idea, metaphorically at least, in the idea of past to present, things can change, present to future. But even the deeper emotions that we tend to think of these static things like forgiveness and transition and healing, they're all movement as well. So if anything, it's just help people feel seen, give them the reason to be hopeful, and then I feel happy.
Well, we're moving into a new year. So people are looking to turn over a new leaf. They're looking to move. They're looking to evolve. They're looking to change or up level, improve, grow, expand, move towards that future self that they've always envisioned. What's a journal prompt that they could start with now or at the beginning of the new year to get things moving, to get closer to that idealized version that they have of themselves?
Yeah, I would say a couple. I mean, the one that I always like people to do is the prompt that is just, I'm the kind of person who blank. And then I require people to use verbs because the issue with like people say, like for the new year, this year I want to be happy or, whatever. But people, like, I know maybe not everyone says that, but people say, I want to be success. Like, boil it down. You say, what do you want? People say, I want to be happy. I want to be successful. I want to be confident. I want to be in love. These things, usually adjectives that people use.
Mm-hmm.
And again, power of language, I just found that we kind of set ourselves up for inevitable failure there in the sense that like adjectives are always going to be taken from us randomly. Like happiness is never something that we can control. Success, confidence, fulfillment, love, we can't control those things. They're taken, they're given away. Randomness, luck, the economy, craziness, the algorithms, right? And I think we have the ability to guide ourselves and give ourselves a little bit more credit when we think about verbs, things that we can control, the little things that we can do that will make us happy and love and successful. So that prompt helps you. I usually open with the prompt of find the adjective and let's break down the adjective into the things that we could do. And this is all habit formation ideas, right? If you're a fan of Atomic Habits, like he has the same idea when it comes to like losing 10 pounds, right? The goal is to become a healthy person by doing XYZ. What are the things that a healthy person does? So I always do that as a prompt, I think is powerful. Another prompt that I like to do is like think about contrast and like reverse gratitude. We're so focused on, especially in the new year, what is that next level you like? And I do love that intention. But again, we're really, really good at, as humans, of identifying lack, of identifying more. Like, this is what I lack. Here's what I could do more of. And we're obsessed with that. And we're so good at spotting that we're very apt to call out the fact that we don't have that. And it could become this thing. I have a prompt that I call the best revenge in life, which is the best revenge. The quote is the best revenge in life is to not be like your enemy. And I have people describe their enemy in the sense that usually your enemy is the opposite of you in some sense, like opposite morally, discipline, values, work ethic, all these things. And I have people describe that person so that in reverse gratitude, they can be grateful that they haven't chosen the easy path of being that person, right? So we're so quick to say, I need to do more. Can we just pause for a second and give ourselves credit for the things that we don't do? The easier, the slide, the slippery slope. Little things like that I have found just like give you a little bit more oomph, give yourself credit. And then you could say, okay, the things that I do, add that to the list of I'm the kind of person who. So somewhere in there maybe is a good prompt to do both of those are easy to do.
Yeah, I wish more people would take January as a slow roll. It's still winter. Like we're still meant to be working on ourselves inward. We're still meant to be hibernating. We're still meant to be moving a little slower. That's the power of watching nature and moving with it instead of fighting it. It's not necessarily the time to go full steam ahead. Slow roll is sometimes a little more powerful.
I agree. I mean, my whole word that I'm really leaning into is being unrushed in life. Like, pace is very subjective. Like, I'm a big fan of going fast if that's the stage of life you're in, and it's a speed that's dictated by you, by awareness, and by passion, not by other people, not by keeping up, not by expectations. If that's the case, go freaking fast, but make sure you're unrushed in that sense, right?
Yeah.
I think, especially in the day and age of embetterment and wellness and acute realizations around what we lack and how much better we can get. I think we're very quick to label the time between now and when we achieve that next level as an in-between day. Like, I don't know if you remember, I don't know if you're a big social media person, but there was this like trend on TikTok with that song, Can We Skip to the Good Part?
Oh,
And
yes.
people would put those montages together. And it would be like, blah, 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 pause. Can we skip to the good part? And then fast forward to like the amazingness. And like, that hurt my soul so much to like, people didn't mean it in the depth that I give it here, but it's like, you want to skip to the good part? I was like, my friend, the good part is the part that you decide is the good part. Like, and the good part can coincide with the part where you're also working on yourself. It could coincide with the part where you're healing yourself. Like, for us to say this is an in-between day and I just got to get through it so I could finally bask in the glory of being my hottest and happiest and most successful self, I think is the literal ingredient and recipe for regret in life. So big fan of moving slow, big fan
Hmm.
of moving fast, big
Hmm.
fan of whatever it is of being unrushed and savoring the moment, whether it's a healing moment or a celebrating moment or a starting over moment, and to never say that it's a in between day, something that you want to skip past.
Yeah. It makes me think of those sayings that your parents say that one day they ultimately you get it. And my mom has always said to me, it's the journey, it's not the destination.
Yeah, so
And
right.
just, I try to just remind myself of that every day, that it's every day is the joy. It's not out there somewhere. It's not at the end.
It has to be. And like, I'm not like a very spiritual or deep guy. I mean, I am technically,
You
but I'm
are.
not like big, like I am. Okay. Remove that. I'm not a big like philosopher, like guy, but like, even like, if you think about it, the only thing that is literally real is the present. Like,
Hmm.
the past, for one, has gone through so many revisions in our head. It's tough to know what exactly happened back then. Let's be real. The future is, is great. It's filled with hope and butterflies and rainbows, but it hasn't happened yet. The only thing that is real is the present. So if you want to like check yourself a little bit with just logic, I find
Hmm.
that to be uplifting. This is the only thing that is real. And I want to experience what's real. I don't want to live in nostalgia, and I don't want to be blinded by potential, right? Those are all powerful emotions that can be very helpful, but I want to make the most of the moment.
As you reflect on the year, what are some of the big takeaways that you've gotten from a few of the guests on your podcast? Some of the lessons that you
Well,
really, really
fun
gained.
fact about the pod. I've
Yeah.
actually only had about 10 guests on the pod over like 7 years because the pod's all about me and I love to talk. So I can give you the answer of what I've learned
Yeah.
through myself, in addition to all the great things we've been talking about here. I mean, I think the biggest one that really like, it's the reason I wrote my book. It really gave me a lot of clarity is like checking ourselves a little bit. Like, we are hypocritical, not in a bad, well, in a bad way, but not in because we're bad people way. Like, my opening chapter to That's Bold of You is about this thing called the beautiful mess effect, which basically says like, think about qualities that you like in other people. Most of them boil up to this one word: vulnerability. You like vulnerable people. Vulnerable people are people who aren't afraid to be weird, wild, eccentric, passionate, intense, honest, silly, goofy, right? Those are vulnerable traits, right? Vulnerability doesn't always mean like sensitive. It just means you're willing to be vulnerable and be real and honest. Like, you want weird friends, you want friends who have a good time. Of course, you want honest friends. You want friends who are willing to be a beginner. Great qualities. I'd say across the board, unless you have some weird preference, you would say, yeah, those are the friends that I want in life. But then when it comes to ourselves and being that person, we say, well, other people won't appreciate that. Other people won't appreciate my weirdness, my passion, my intensity, my eccentricities, my weirdness. We have this weird hypocrisy when it comes to traits that we admire versus us becoming and embracing that trait. The beautiful mess effect was the coining of that acknowledgement, and these social scientists a couple years ago kind of set out to prove that in different social settings, that we think everyone will hate us when we do the awkward, vulnerable thing, but we love it in other people. And they proved it. They did all these different studies, social studies, where they, for instance, they had two groups of people. They had one group of people say, hey, in a couple of minutes, you're going to go sing this song in front of a group of 50 people. And they're like, before you do that, though, how do you think it's going to go? And they asked them, and they're like, this is going to be horrible. They're going to laugh at me. This is going to be terribly embarrassing. They're going to point and laugh and, throw fruit at me. And they said, okay, pause. And they went to the other group and they said, hey, by the way, in a couple of minutes, a person's going to come up here and sing a song in front of you. How do you think it's going to go? And they all said, well, it doesn't really matter. Like, it would take balls to get up here and do that. Like good for them. Like, that's amazing. Good for them. So time and time again, they just showed the disconnect between perception and reality. And they did it across other settings too. Like, asking for help was a big one. Admitting a mistake was a big one. Things that were like, well, I can't ask for help. People will think less of me. And they were like, no. Time and time again, they show that people think it's an admirable trait. They want that in partners and friends and colleagues. So that's the biggest thing I've learned to answer your question, is embrace vulnerability. Don't let the internet, don't let movies, don't let your humanity convince you that those are traits that should be hidden. Those are traits that bring the right people into your life. And if we're hiding them, yeah, like, you feel lonely, you hide the traits that you think will make people run from you, you become lonelier. It becomes this cycle. We have to, and I know it's not easy, because yes, certain people will not be drawn to those, but they're not necessarily not drawn to them because you embrace them. They're just not drawn to your flavor of them, which is fine. But we have to put those things out there. I think it's a bold thing. That's what I wrote about. And I think for me that transcends into life, into business, and into relationships. So it's like a very broad but powerful concept.
So you were passionate enough about bold to write about bold. What are other feelings or thought forms that you're curious to dive into in 2025?
So I have a book coming out in August of 25, which is about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And not like a how to get the guy or how to get the girl. Like, I think we have enough books about rules of love and this and that. And who am I to throw another rule out there? The book is a reframing of what is the point of love in the first place. So many of us have just lost sight of the plot, not because
Yeah.
we're bad people, but because admittedly it is difficult to date. And so we have been drawn to settling. I wrote the book because you would hear this phrase, settle down. Oh, maybe it's time to settle down. And I'm like, I hate that phrase so much. The point of a relationship cannot be to settle down, right? It can't, the only instance where that is true is in the sense that, yeah, maybe you're not going on dates. Maybe eventually you have children and there is a practicality of settling down. But I want a relationship that brings more to my life,
I
that
agree.
gives me more joy and more happiness, and amplifies all of the hard work that I've done to find my sense of self and brings it to the next level. Yeah, so I spent the last 2 years writing it, and it's basically a celebration of the purpose. It's a reminder to not settle in the face of loneliness, in the face of pressure. It's a reminder to use the right words. I call it settling up, not settling down.
Mm-hmm.
So, circle back in about 8 months. I'll talk more about it.
No, I like that, because I think we do need to reframe the whole purpose of having a relationship, because it should be fun. We should be finding someone who
Imagine
wants to
that.
have fun with us. Like, it's a lot more. I've spent most of my life single, and I've traveled the world a lot. And I always think when I'm in those places, gosh, if I would love to have another person's perspective on this experience. I would love to be in this town, in this village, up in this bell tower with another person who was seeing it in a different way than me, even though we're both standing in the exact same spot with the same perspective. Their mind, their past experiences are going to bring a different direction to what this looks like. And I would love another direction. It's like when you spend a day with someone, they're going to pull you into other shops, into other restaurants, into just other little experiences. And like, wouldn't that be a joy to bring into your life? Instead of, I feel like I meet a lot of people now who they see relationships as an overwhelm of responsibility.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah.
I just
Well, I
see
mean,
it as a play
what
date.
you just said has so much truth in the layers that we would unpack there. Like, yeah, I mean, the cliche is true. Like, so many people are looking for a partner to become their life and to solve their problems,
Mm.
not add to it, in the sense that you have done all this work to find your happiness and your success. They've done the same. You come together and it's an amplification effort.
Yes.
Speaking of the power of language, in the book, I talk about the difference between building life together and doing life together. We put so much pressure on ourselves to say, I can't wait until I find my person so I could build a life together with them, which, of course, is a beautiful sentiment. Don't get me wrong. And in a sense, you do build a life, right? You build a family, you could build a home. It's a beautiful thing. The layers below that, though, is what you possibly are saying when you are dating from a place of lack and from a place of passiveness. You are in a holding pattern in your life until you find a person. And then finally, you get to life. Life becomes life. Like, my whole thing is you go out and you live your best self,
Yeah.
the cliche, you find yourself, you love yourself, and then you find someone else who's done the same, you join forces, and now you do life together. You've already built your sense of self. You've built the foundation of your life. Sure, you're building something larger together now, but there isn't this massive, massive pressure to say, I'm not building the life of my dreams until I have my partner. Sure, the life of your dreams very much can and should contain someone else, but that is not the thing. That is not 98% of the battle. And I just think, you know, we either go to these extremes. We go to the extremes of like every man and every woman is this, so like forget them all. And we go into the Andrew Tate realm of just like self hatred and like all this crap. Or we go the other way of desperate dating. I need a partner. If I don't have a partner, something wrong with me. There's a middle ground. Well, nothing related to Andrew Tate, but there's a middle ground there that's nothing to do with him. And that has to do with exactly what you just said of like bringing that perspective together. But you already have that perspective. You're not waiting for your partner to give you perspective. You're not waiting for your partner to say, let's travel the world and get perspective. Like, that is the amplification. So yeah, I feel very strongly about the topic. It sounds like you do as well, which is great. I think people can learn a lot from that.
Well, and hopefully we stop seeing and hearing so many people complaining about the state of relationships and the state of dating.
Yeah.
And it expands to something more beautiful. And we're talking about how to just elevate our relationships, how to have better experiences within our relationships, how to use words and spirituality and food and our health and wellness activities and time in nature to just expand ourselves and look at all the amazing experiences we can have and how we can just, I don't know, use the opportunity when we're in love or when we are in partnership with somebody. Like, now let's talk about manifestation and how when you have two minds instead of just one, how you can create more. So
Agreed. And my definition of not to go off track because we
yeah.
wrap it up, but when I think about the idea of manifesting, manifesting means so many different things to different people. I'm not a big fan of like passive manifesting, like just belief and visualization and eventually come true. For me, manifesting has always been giving the universe, which I believe in cosmic redirection and randomness and luck and all these amazing things. Manifesting is giving the universe more to react to, more in the sense of more things you've done, more countries you've traveled to, more dates you've gone on, more food you've made, more books you've written, more chance encounters you've had in elevators. And so it supports what we're saying here, that live your full, whole life and then find someone else who's also done that. And then you bring it all together and boom, you've got this massive manifesting effect. So it still has come
Yeah.
from the same place of create your own wholeness on your own and then amplify that with someone else who's done the same. And it's going to be so much more rewarding than thinking of your life as being in between when you find a partner and now and then. And so I like that as well.
Well, you write your text on your social media in the color red. And we've moved into this conversation about love and relationships, and red is the color of passion. How did you choose the color that you choose to share your words with?
Yeah, I should think about that, and I'll amend the story looking backwards. But honestly, the answer is I just wanted to stand out, and I like red. I don't know why everyone. I don't know whether it was our upbringing or something. Maybe it was getting your papers graded in red pen, but like it was like, oh, red is a violent, passionate color. I'm like, passionate color, absolutely. I like it. Red is energetic.
Yeah,
Spend a lot of time in China. Red's a big color over there. Perhaps
it is.
that's a lucky color. So I don't know. I think wanted to stand out. felt more energetic than black. I felt a little bit more original. So I just started writing in it. And now, yeah, I've got a million black pens in my apartment.
Do you write in black and then translate it to red? How does it work for you?
No, that's what. So I write on a piece of paper in a red pen, and then I
Yeah.
take a picture of it with my phone. It's a piece of paper. I don't write on a tablet. It's not a font. There's nothing digital about it. It is old school.
So it's more powerful that way. That's,
Well, yeah. I mean, the
yeah.
mind body connection there, like, I, yeah, absolutely. I really like writing on
Well,
things as opposed to doing it digitally.
and now that you're going to be taking some classes from Dr. Joseph Michael Levery, you'll see that he'll mention when you're supposed to write things in certain colors. Sometimes it's a black pen,
Cool.
sometimes it's a red pen,
Cool.
sometimes it's blue, and sometimes it's green.
Cool. I got to look into this
You're
because
going to love this.
we're kindred spirits clearly. But he's probably got a lot more scientific knowledge to it, and I'm just out here trying to piece it together. I always refer to my language as golden retriever language because it's so simple, but
It's
maybe our powers combined. You know.
It's deep. It's deep.
Thanks.
You're a philosopher, you're a poet, you carry deep wisdom. And when you start doing your past life regression work, please reach out so I can have you back on the podcast because I want to hear where you've been and what you've done.
Yeah, I need to. I remember reading Many Lives, Many Masters,
Yeah.
which of course is the classic there. And I was like, well, that's freaking cool. And then I just moved on with my life. So I need to revisit.
It'll come up when it's time. In the meantime, where can the listeners continue to learn from you and connect from you and hear from you?
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. This was a great chat. Case.Kenny on Instagram. The podcast is New Mindset Who Dis. Any of my books, journals, they're all on Amazon. Pretty easy to find.
And can you leave the listener maybe with one last journal prompt to start their new year with?
Yeah, I would say the best one, and I'll do it in 30 seconds because I have a whole spiel about it. A gratitude prompt. The best gratitude comes by bringing past pain into the present and realizing how free you are of it. Right? So often we say, I'm thankful for my health. Well, how do you feel thankful for your health? Bring a past health-related frustration into the present. Let's say you had a cold or you had COVID 6 weeks ago and it really was horrible and debilitating, and now you don't. Bring it into the present and do a prompt of I'm grateful to not, and describe the not from the past. Reverse gratitude. Guarantee you'll feel it. I'm grateful to not have a debilitating sore throat and to not be able to sing, or I had a broken foot not to be able to run, whatever it is. You'll feel that in the present. So that's my form of gratitude.
Yeah, and people can remember how far they've come in their health and wellness
Yeah, it's a great
journey.
reminder again about movement. So
How
it's
good
perfect.
they look, how great they feel.
Yes.
It's a great prompt for the new year.
Yes.
Thank you, Case.
Of course. Thanks for having me.